All right. City of Rockaway Beach City Council meeting on Wednesday, May 10th, 2023 at 6:12 will now come to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Takes a vote. All right. Let's record who is in attendance. Council President Cheek.
Present.
Councilor Franken.
Present.
Councilor Hayes. Councilor Martine. Here. Councilor McGinnis.
Here.
Mayor McNeely is both here and present. The council agenda, the consent agenda is a tool used to streamline meeting procedures by collecting routine and non-controversial items into a group whereby all are passed with a single motion and vote. You all have before you the consent agenda on the approval of the meeting minutes for council workshop on Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. Council meeting on Wednesday, April 12th, 2023, and the April 2023 check register. The minutes of the previous meetings and check register were distributed beforehand. Are there any issues or concerns with these documents?
Question. And the check register AV capture subscription for $6,250. What is that?
Yeah, that's our annual subscription for the service that records the audio
Okay.
for our meetings. It also ties it into the agenda. And there's two subscriptions in there. One for this computer, one for upstairs, as we enable the ability to have workshops and into our budget meetings up there here real soon.
So it's part of the OWL too, is that right?
It does use the microphone from the owl, but otherwise unrelated.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions or concerns? May I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and second that we approve the consent agenda. We'll now record councilors' votes. Council President Cheek,
Yes.
Councilor Franken,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Councilor Martine,
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. We'll move into presentations, guests, and announcements, and I'm quite frankly very excited about this because the Sarah Absher, Tillamook County Community Development Director, is going to talk to a couple of items that are very important to the city of Rockaway Beach. First, she's going to talk about SB 406, and then she'll talk about the theme is biological opinion. So take it away, Director Absher.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. For the record, my name is Sarah Absher. I'm the Director of the Tillamook County Department of Community Development. Thank the council and city manager for inviting me to join you this evening. So talking about Senate Bill 406 first. Senate Bill 406 is currently under review at the state legislature during this very robust legislative session. And what it is it's a bill that was written by myself, Senator Suzanne Weber's staff, and County Commissioner Aaron Starr. And it's a bill that would promote middle housing in our cities and unincorporated communities that are served by water and sewer. Middle housing are housing opportunities that include duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and cottage clusters up to 4 units. And what's significant about this bill is that it would extend opportunities to allow for middle housing projects within our cities and unincorporated communities that are currently only afforded to cities across Oregon with populations of 10,000 or more people. So essentially what we're asking the state to do is to extend an opportunity to Tillamook County as a rural coastal community to participate in that program to see if we too can deliver other types of housing opportunities and options for people who want to live and work in Tillamook County. It's important, I think, to note that apartments aren't the magic solution. Apartments don't fit everywhere, and we've seen this in our coastal communities statewide. But what if there are other options that are more proportionate to the size and scale of our cities with water and sewer, transportation, infrastructure, etc.? And I think what's also important about this proposal is it doesn't mean every property will have a fourplex pop up on it. What it means is the options there. If you can meet setbacks, if you can meet parking requirements, it would not extend building heights unless the cities or the county decided to do that as part of updating our zoning codes. Really what it does is it just opens the door with clear and objective standards to allow for other types of housing in our communities and cities that isn't just limited to one single family lot, irrespective of its size. The other thing that's important about this bill is it pulls in other opportunities that Tillamook County and the cities would be accessible to that currently aren't available. And largely that includes technical and financial support from the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. So with this bill, if the legislature passes this bill, what it means is that the county and the city's obligations would be to amend our zoning codes to allow for these types of housing opportunities in our residential zones, again, with those appropriate development standards that fit within the parameters of your city. But then the second piece of it would be the state's obligation to provide us with technical and financial support to get the work done. And where there may be some financial gaps, many of you may know this, the county has the Housing Initiatives Fund. That fund is supported by short-term rental operator licensees. We currently just awarded over $750,000 to local workforce housing projects in our county. And the majority of that fund came from the short-term rental operator licensee through those housing initiatives. So we want to partner with our city. Luke has been involved with his staff, Scott Primusi, at some level of the conversations. The ask to the city council tonight is for your support to let us continue to work with your staff as we're working with other city staff within our county to shepherd this bill with Senator Weber to get it through the legislative session so that we can work together collaboratively to balance and equal housing across our county. One of the other pieces that would come from that is development of updated housing needs assessments, and then also the creation of housing production strategies. One thing we know for people who want to live and work in our communities and in our cities is that there's a real estate market challenge. We've got high real estate prices. We've got, real estate scarcity. And the housing production strategies that we were developed together are important because those are the incentives. Those are the bridges to the gaps for local developers or contractors to help create and build that new housing. So the county recently approved a property tax exemption for abatement program. We have the short-term rental operator license fee that funds our housing initiatives fund so that we can award money to people in our communities who want to build workforce housing projects. We would continue to expand those production strategies with our city partners and then with our partners at the state. So with your support, I'd love to keep going, bring Rockaway in this with us and continue to work together. I'm happy to answer the questions you have.
I have a question. What's going to stop one of these people that come in and put a fourplex up, not making it an STR?
I love that question. Thank you for asking. I always hope somebody asks that question. That's my favorite one. So two answers. The first answer is that the city has the ability to regulate that through your other local ordinances and licensing requirements. So you can decide, you can say only one dwelling unit, you can say None, and that's really up to you how you want to regulate that, and you can do that separately and independently from this process. The second answer is that if a contractor or a developer took advantage of those incentives that we developed through that housing production strategy, we can impose limitations, such as none of the rentals could be used, not only for short-term rentals, but maybe for any type of transient lodging, like a bed and breakfast. So there's ways that we can work together to minimize and mitigate or prevent, if that's the city's desire, to make sure that those units don't get converted into STRs in the future. There's a lot of ways to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Where is 406 right now in the legislative process?
Thank you. Another great question. We testified in front of the House committee last week. We are waiting for a decision. The Senate did already pass it with recommendation of passage by the legislature. So as you know, we've also approached now this special moment during the legislative session where there's bills that are going to start dying again because they're going to make their second round of cuts. And we are hoping that the House supports our efforts and passes this through so we can get to that final phase and hopefully have the bill passed by the end of June. Yes, Mayor.
So if the bill passes by the end of June, realistically, when could we see funding available to us as a city to do a housing needs analysis, for example?
Another great question, thank you. So the first timeline, the first deadline is the end of 2024. And that is for all of us to have our zoning codes updated for our residential zoning districts. So that's step one. Depending on funding available for the cities, that is something we can certainly partner with through that Housing Initiatives Fund to help support you with Measure 56 services or whatever else would need to be done to get that completed. DLCP would then help support and earmark funding for the HNA that would come next. And again, the county would also partner with that because we would want to approve a comprehensive HNA countywide for our cities and our unincorporated communities that have water and sewer. So, and I believe our deadline for that is a couple of years out. And there's more flexibility with that deadline to complete that. But the HNA would be coupled with the housing production strategies that we would move forward together.
So that funding's not going to happen in the next few months.
No.
Okay, all right.
No, but like I said, you know, there are some benchmarks. So our obligations are get our zoning codes updated. And then through the HNA and the housing production strategy, it's going to give us benchmarks that we'll have to develop to commit to meeting those housing production needs over a certain period of time. But there is some flexibility in that because the state also recognizes that there are things beyond our control, market changes, economy, et cetera. So it's more of a responsible reporting piece at that time, unless somebody's dragging their feet and the state's going to come in and say, okay, you need to, make this easier for folks to come in and develop housing in your city. But largely, what this is for those of you that might be familiar with House Bill 2001, passed a couple of years ago by the legislature. Basically, what we've done is we've taken that bill and we want to add Tuolumne County to it. It would be the first county and coastal cities under a population of 10,000 to do this. So it really is something we would be leading the way across the state for other smaller areas to see if we can get it done.
Thank you. When you said get our zoning ordinances up to date, are you referring to each of the incorporated cities and the county?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's where we would continue to work together. So currently I do have monthly working group meetings with all the cities and city staff. So we coordinate, we talk about building program, we talk about health department stuff. This is something that we would fold in to our working groups and we would be able to commit, of course, with Rockaway with your consent, to continue to develop those strategies and get our zoning codes updated together. Bay City, Manzanita, and McKinley. No, excuse me, Bay City, Manzanita, and Tuolumne. are already working on updating all of their residential codes for middle housing. So we're all gonna be in different phases, but, you know, we're gonna work together to get everybody to meet that end of 2024 deadline.
So then the public process would be at the county instead of, last time we did that, that took a long time for us to do, actually. So all that would be done in a public process at the county, and then it would come before us and we would vote on it, is that right?
So close, it would actually, we would have to go to each city and go through an ordinance, a text amendment process to update all of your
So
zoning.
we'd still do it for like last time?
Yes,
Maybe
but-
it wouldn't take 10 years?
It's not a zone change, and right, I mean, there's a lot of templates we can use, and again, I mean, you know, it's not about upending all of your residential zoning districts, so you don't have to change your setbacks if you don't want to. You don't have to change your current parking requirements if you don't want to. What this does is that, you know, it's about clear and objective standards. So instead of maybe having to go through a conditional use or some sort of process that isn't straightforward because it's discretionary, we want to pull the discretionary component out of the process and put it to where it's a, yes, you have parking and no, you don't. Yes, you need setbacks or no, you don't, just like you would for a single family dwelling. So that's how we're going to update your zone, you know, it's how we would work together to update zoning ordinances. But, you know, it may require an amendment to your goal 10 element, which is your housing element. It may not. It depends on what your policies already say. So it may not be that much of a lift. The hearings process itself with the meetings may be where the most work comes in. But again, that's where we partner together.
You mentioned 3 towns that were already updating their zones. Are they doing that independently, or they're not waiting to work with the county? They just decide. So Rockaway could also decide to get ahead of this and do theirs independently too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So my hope would be if the legislature passes 406, that we would immediately start working together. That would start with who needs what support, you know, doing an audit of all of our zoning districts to where as planning professionals, we can sit down together and help each other and then make recommendations for your planning staff to bring back to.
And it seems, from what I've been hearing, it seems that the sooner we towns, if we decided we wanted to participate, well, actually, we wouldn't have a choice. If this passes, we'd have to participate. But the sooner that we would get these our zones updated, the sooner other money could come in, like for housing needs analysis and things like that. Is that?
Potentially, yeah. Or we develop a schedule together based on, you know, when DLC would be releasing those funds, what the county can contribute. You know, it makes sense for us to hire the same consultant to share that work for an updated HNA. We hired a firm a couple of years ago. Rockaway did get some data. So I think that would be part of those next steps if it passes, is to sit down and map out how we're going to get there.
One thing the city is funding in-house and also going to come real soon is our own housing needs analysis. Maybe you could talk about that. What's the value of us proceeding versus focusing on ordinance updates and waiting to work on housing needs and production strategies in a partnership with the county? You know, I'm not familiar enough to know what's the best move for Rockaway, in your opinion.
Well, I think that they're both great moves. I think the question is, do you have the capacity to do it now? Do you have the staff and the financial resources to do it? Because you can certainly get started right away. I mean, what's important about a housing needs analysis is that it tells you what you have and what you need, right? And it tells you what you need over a 20-year projection. It's also going to tell you how much you're behind currently. So, you know, having that information as quickly as possible is always a good thing. But they're expensive and they take time. So, you know, if the city wanted to wait, you know, for us and everybody to come on board and that funding from DLCD come in, that's great. If you want to keep going now, we certainly support you in that.
Interesting.
Following Luke's question, if we did, the city council did vote to appropriate $41,000 for a housing need analysis. We haven't started it yet, but if there is a possibility that money could be better used someplace else and we could get lower cost or a free one in a few months, that seems a prudent use of money. So then what the city manager was asking is, then we could go ahead and update our zoning ordinances to meet this. My question is, how do we know what will eventually come out of this bill that we need to update to?
Sure, so the bill talks about updating your residential zoning codes. And then it talks about the development of a housing needs analysis and a housing production strategy. But those two latter pieces, there's also funding that the state has to commit to help us. And so the question then is, though, when they have the time to do that, and they can't drag their feet either. I mean, I don't know if I could say it would be within a year, but would it be within 2 years? Absolutely, because that money is already earmarked in DLCD, the Oregon Department of Land Conservation Development, for this biennium.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of usable land to build on. And from what I understand with the flood problems that we have, that we may have less amount of land to use. How is this going to affect that?
Another great question. So part of the strategies of the housing production strategy and the housing needs assessment, this bill would give us greater flexibility for going through buildable lands inventory, which is an exercise you have to complete to justify expanding a city boundary or UGB to include more lands. Now, we didn't have to do it for the new area up the hill, or not north, but east of Palisades, right? Because it was for emergency purposes. They didn't make us go through a lot of the hoops that they would make us go through for a normal expansion. But when it comes to housing and residential or commercial development, they do. And there's some pretty strict statutes and administrative rules with very high benchmarks to justify expanding a boundary to get more land to develop. And you have to complete this buildable lands inventory that basically states you have developed, including density infill, everything in your community or city. And until you can prove that you've done that, essentially you can't extend those boundaries. With this bill, and with the work that's also being done at the state, we would be afforded greater flexibility. So basically those benchmarks would be lowered for us to be able to look at expanding your UGB or your city boundary. And that would be coupled with some of the other work the governor and the legislature is doing to also provide opportunities for cities to make it easier to expand their UGBs, understanding that those benchmarks currently under state law are so high. So short answer following the long is we'll have more flexibility to look at expansions.
And that's going to make FEMA happy.
Probably. That's a whole, I don't think we are ever going to make them happy. Just saying. We'll talk about that in a minute though. But yeah.
Councillor Hayes has a question.
Well, or comment about, because I have a different perspective, having built so much in so many different neighborhoods there, we have a lot of inconsistency in setbacks and building heights and things between county property and city property. And for me, I would like us to be more consistent so that everybody has the same rules that are in the same neighborhoods. We have areas where one street has one set of rules, the next street has different rules, and the next street has the other street's rules. And so that can be confusing for people who work in the area too, not just contractors, but planners and the like. And so even our setbacks are much different than most of the rest of the county. And so a realtor working in different cities can get confused and have the wrong setbacks that they're telling clients because we're different than everyone else. And so for me, the idea of consistency or having the same building heights all along the ocean front, that kind of thing is helpful. And I wonder about the FEMA rules changing, and if we're gonna look at some of the residential zoning, maybe that's something else we wanna look at too. Do we, I think it's time for us to do this work anyway, and if we have the opportunity to work with the county and be consistent in our community, and it's cheaper, then, it sounds good to me so far. I don't have anything to read yet, and so, but,
I have two things. Is the end result, if 406 is passed, that all of the incorporated towns in Tillamook County will have roughly the same residential zoning ordinances? Or will there still be some flexibility?
There will still be flexibility, and I do want to be respectful of the nuances that support community character and community identity up and down our coastal towns and cities. I do agree with Christine as well. Working in that field, it can get confusing because we've all got our own programs, and in some ways there isn't consistency. I think that's where we look to our elected officials for guidance. How much do you want to streamline? And maybe there are some cities that are going to want to streamline because they really think that what they have is what they need. But there's flexibility. There's no hard and fast rule beyond. You have to allow these types of middle housing as an outright permitted use.
And then my other one's a follow-up to a question I asked earlier about where it was in the committee process. What is your estimate of its 406 chances of passing?
Well, I'm very optimistic. For one, we had Thousand Friends of Oregon actually testify in support of this bill. I almost fell off my chair. Because they never support, and so I think that really was just this incredible example of the recognition of how bad our housing crisis is and how we have to work together to solve it. So, I'm hopeful the House will pass it and we'll get it to the floor. Senator Weber, Representative Javity, got a lot of good people supporting this and shoving this through. Our major employers are very excited about this. They have been writing letters of support and testifying at these hearings because it's affecting our economy. I'm hopeful.
Well, thank you. So let's move on to another favorite topic of ours.
Yes, yes, it is. Well, I don't know if it's a favorite, but it's certainly a big topic, right, these days. So I've been working on this since 2014.
Let me say it's the FEMA by,
The implementation of the biological opinion in the state of Oregon.
thank you.
Yes. So just quickly, level of familiarity with the National Flood Insurance Program in FEMA. So I just want to make sure when I start, we all understand the relationship and our obligations. So I'm happy to take a step back and give a little bit of background if you'd like me to.
Why don't you step back and.
Maybe
just
not
give a-
everyone in the audience is familiar.
Yeah.
Okay. So those of you that were here, the 1996 flood was pretty catastrophic to our county. And it was at that time that Tillamook County decided to enter the National Flood Insurance Program. The National Flood Insurance Program was created by Congress in, I believe, 1968. And so the purpose of the program essentially was to create an insurance program where affordable insurance rates could be obtained by homeowners. And with that, opportunities for federal disaster funding relief. FEMA told the county, and so when I say county, I mean our cities too, Basically, to enter into the National Flood Insurance Program, which is the NFIP, we would be required then to follow their code of federal regulations for building or developing in areas of special flood hazard. And with that, local zoning ordinances had to be updated to reflect things like elevation requirements, venting requirements, utility elevation, right? And they don't have to, these regulations weren't intended to prohibit uses in zones, but what they were intended to do was establish a set of construction standards to minimize risk of flood to life and property. So that in a nutshell is the National Flood Insurance Program. So we said, yes, we'd like to enter into a flood insurance program. Yes, we commit to implementing all of these new development standards into our local zoning ordinances in exchange, and we will make sure development occurs, elevated structures, et cetera, permitting processing. So there was a significant shift in the late 2000s. And the shift was the result of the Audubon Society suing FEMA in Oregon. And they sued in Washington first, they're currently in California. But they sued Oregon, I believe in 2009, stating that because FEMA had allowed development in floodplains, in special floodplains, they're called areas of special flood hazard. So it's your A zones, it's your floodway, it's your areas that are subject to ocean flooding. Because FEMA had allowed development in these floodplains, it had resulted in jeopardy of Endangered Species Act. So yes, they listed salmon species, and it was specifically coho and coho juvenile rearing habitat. And FEMA lost the lawsuit. And as a result of the judge's decision that concurred with Audubon Society, the judge ordered a biological opinion for the state of Oregon that focused solely on fish recovery. So recovery of our coho population. The National Marine Fisheries, NIMS, who was under the umbrella of NOAA, wrote the biological opinion, and that was published in 2016. When the biological opinion was published, there were 6 action items that were called reasonable and prudent alternatives. And this was a very draconian style biological opinion, again, that did not take anything into account except for fish recovery. One of the first actions that was required was that FEMA basically imposed a moratorium on any new development in floodplains. We sued. We were part of Oregonians for Floodplain Protection. In 2017, I signed a declaration on behalf of Tillamook County to sue FEMA, stating that they did not have jurisdictional authority to impose these regulations and change our development programs. Because up until this lawsuit, FEMA was not a regulatory entity. They're emergency management, they're flood insurance, they're not regulatory, they're not a federal regulatory entity. There were several other things in the lawsuit, but that was number one, along with, this was FEMA's obligation to respond to the outcome of the lawsuit and fix the issues, not to weaponize flood insurance programs and push these obligations onto local jurisdictions. The judge dismissed our case because we could not prove harm. So essentially FEMA had not yet forced us to impose that moratorium or adopt the suite of regulations that they wanted us to adopt to comply with this lawsuit. They hadn't forced us to do anything, so therefore we could not prove harm. In 2018, coupled with the lawsuit, there were several of us that petitioned Congress to implement a pause to this process because their implementation deadline was 2018. And Congressman DeFazio was able to get a 3-year pause passed by Congress. So that pause ended in 2021. During that period of the pause, myself, our attorney, and a few others continued to work behind the scenes to figure out how to reshape or stop this process. I don't think anybody questions the significance of fish recovery. I don't think anybody questions the significance of water quality, right? These are all things we want. We've got people making watershed councils, stormwater conservation district, working lands and waters, all these entities across our county and beyond, Estuary Partnership, that are doing incredible work. So why are we doing the work? We don't need to be told we have to do the work. So we continue to stay at the table with FEMA during the pause. The pause was lifted in 2021 and FEMA immediately entered into the next phase of implementation. Obviously, the moratorium piece now is off the table and instead they were working on developing a model ordinance for local jurisdictions to adopt. And what that ordinance would do is essentially prohibit or severely limit any new development in these floodplains. And development is defined by FEMA as any need change. So what that means is, if you want to repair your roof, if you want to build a fence, think about that. Any change that you make to your property, by FEMA's definition, is development. Commissioner Yamamoto started going to the National Association of Counties in 2021. Been working closely with him and others to petition Congress for another pause because FEMA's process was largely incomplete. They were going to start this process to force local jurisdictions to adopt new regulations that they actually had not even comprehensively completely drafted, which is very concerning for all of us. DeFazio, he retired at the end of this last year. We were able to work with him and get another pause in one of the last 2 bills that were on the table before the end of this last congressional session. We don't know what happened, but unfortunately, towards the end of the session, the pause was removed from the bill, so it didn't pass. FEMA also, towards the end of 2021, started what's called a NEPA review process. So it's an environmental review process that has to be done at the federal level. So before there's any environmental regulatory change, basically there's this federal environmental review process that's required. And there's various pieces that have to be analyzed before implementation of these new regulations can take place. And they look at environmental impacts, they look at social impacts, they look at economic impacts. And so FEMA initiated this process towards the end of 2021. So they start their environmental review, getting ready to come to us with these new regulations. And at the same time, we're trying to get this pause passed through Congress to delay the process and have more time to try to work with FEMA. The environmental review process has continued, and what's happened that has become very public recently is their public comment periods. So as part of the environmental review process, the agency that's going through it or the entity is required to hold public meetings and solicit public comments on whatever the proposed project or action is. We found out roughly a week before the public meeting here in Tillamook is April 5th. And for those of you that came and shared that, thank you so much. We actually opened a public comment period, I believe it was the first part or mid-March, and it closed last week. And so we found out about it, started working quickly. I think we had in the room that night over 120 people at the port, local folks. We did have some port managers drive up from other areas of the coast. They had a meeting the next night in Eugene where there were about 5 or 6 people there. They had one in Pendleton, I think 2 weeks ago, where they had about 4 people there. And they hosted a virtual meeting online with about 20 people in attendance. So nobody knows. And it's hard to understand, but we're glad that they were here. You know, I'm thankful that they came here, and I'm thankful for everyone who quickly came to that meeting. So the public comment period is closed. Now FEMA's back working at that federal level with their agency partners to finish the documents for this project, and then they will be returning to us sometime at the end of 2025 or 2026. At the end of 2025, what's called a record of decision will be rendered. So FEMA will have to take into account anything we've shared as an economic or social impact. And then potentially make some changes to the implementation of how these new development regulations are going to look like, but we don't know. So one of the things that Tillamook County has done is we've requested cooperating agency status. As a government entity, we have the ability to ask to continue to be at the table and participate in their process. And so we would do that on behalf of Tillamook County as a whole, and then several other counties and cities across the state. They have received our letter, so we are now waiting to see if that gets granted. The other thing that we did, and working with Luke here at the city, is there are many of us that submitted letters of comment. So the attorney that represented us in the 2017 lawsuit, I've kept her on retainer through the Community Development Fund, and she's the one I continue to work with over the last few years. So she and I together wrote a letter on behalf of Tillamook County, capturing a lot of the social economic impacts and factors that we've been thinking about that include impacts to our county parks and recreation areas if we're not able to maintain them or expand them to meet our growing visitor capacity needs. Maintenance of ports and boat ramps, not only for commerce, but also for emergency services. So a lot went into this letter. The primary argument was that the FEMA initiating this environmental review process was premature because we still don't know what is going to be required of us at the local level. The documents are incomplete. You know, it's when we submitted this, but we'll figure out this detail, we'll figure out what this regulation looks like as we continue through the environmental review process. Well, that doesn't work for us. You know, it certainly doesn't work for all of you. And as an administrator of the county's working program, it doesn't work for me. So Berkeley and Wyden and Bonamici have fortunately become very interested recently in this issue. We have been trying to engage in conversations with them for the last couple of years. We're thankful now that there's some noise being made where they're looking into this a little bit closer. And they actually did extend the public comment period for this process. But I'm still concerned that people just don't know enough. So we will continue to remain engaged and stay on top of this in whatever capacity we can. A lot of people have asked me, so what are the consequences? What if we don't? What if we tell people, you know what, you can take your flood insurance program and you can just, you know, go away. So FEMA, anytime that we don't comply or during what they call their community assistance visits, which is basically when they come to local jurisdiction, they require us to pull permits. They're going to go out and look at properties to make sure we have been doing a good job in administration of their rules. If we don't do a good job, they don't punish the jurisdiction. They punish flood insurance policy holders. They raise your insurance rates. But if we don't do a good job and if we don't enforce the rules, we pay more insurance. So with this, what they said is if you do not comply, so by 2027, all the local jurisdictions in Oregon are supposed to have these new rules adopted, whatever they're going to be. But if you do not comply, every flood insurance policy in this county will be immediately suspended. So what that means is if you have a mortgage anywhere in the county that requires flood insurance, and some of us have mortgages that require flood insurance, but we're not in those special impact areas, your loan is going to default to you. Because if the flood insurance policy gets suspended, your loan goes into default immediately. We will no longer be eligible for federal disaster funding relief. So that's a big one. Amber's still paying off the 2015 storm, I think, from what I can understand from our county public works director. And then the lawsuits could ensue from organizations who want us to comply and conform with those ESA requirements. So it could be a landowner, it could be the jurisdiction, it could be anybody. So we're not in a good place right now. It's good to be honest and say that, because it's a terrible place for us to be. I am hopeful, especially with support from Congress, that people will take a step back, allow us and others to come to the table and figure out ways to avoid or mitigate impacts to our riparian areas and our floodplains that would result in harm or take some species or their habitat, and support us and work together to work on ways to improve water quality, especially through stormwater management. There's a lot of good work. We've got a great engineer on staff. ODOT has technical assistance grants. We have the Estuaries Partnership working on developing maybe some strategic and targeted mitigation plans to promote and enhance fish habitat where we know it's actually going to work. So there will be more to come. We're waiting to see what happens now. As I mentioned, we have our cooperating agency letter request, and then the comments are in. So the county is committed again to working with our city partners and our landowners. We are really concerned about what this will result in our counties and the economic consequences it can have. We're just setting aside property rights. This is our farmers, our ports. It's a big deal. I'm sorry to leave you with such heavy news, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I guess I'll ask a question. So if you had a magic wand and the city could do something to help, what would that be?
So that's a great question. I think just continuing to write letters, really making sure that our state and federal delegates do not lose sight of this, because it's a lawsuit. There's not much our state legislators can do. But writing to them and having them help us to get to that congressional level is huge. We are forming a coalition, it's expanding our coalition from our first group that started in 2016. Participation requests, maybe some financial support, that's going to be a huge financial lift, especially if we get to a point to where we have to reconsider litigation. So, the other thing I would offer that I started looking at is, what could we look at in our zoning codes? Could we reevaluate our riparian buffer zones? Could we look at more mitigation heavy measures? The reality is we may have to move to piling and pure construction in these areas if that's what saves development rights to where people can build a home on property. We're again rolling up our sleeves and looking at our development codes and seeing what we can bring to the table. The reality is I don't think fill is going to be prohibited. So usually you put some fill down before you put your conventional foundation, you start a few vents. I never going to do that. But if we put our heads together, we can come back to the table and think about what could we offer instead. So I think this is going to be a game of balance and doing what we can to retain development and property rights.
FEMA hasn't sent us any maps regarding this, where the actual flood lines are going to be. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so that is one of the 6 actions that I mentioned. So one of the actions was the moratorium that were passed. One of the actions is the development regulation changes that I'm talking about tonight. And one of the third is NIMS also ordered that FEMA redesign their mapping methodology, saying that the way that they have determined where those flood boundaries lie is insufficient. Because all of these regulations, so they don't apply, these prohibitions and these restrictions will not apply everywhere in the city. They will apply in areas that are in those areas of special flood hazard. Rockaway, will be honest with you, if you look at your current flood maps, you're one of the most impacted cities. And the notion that FEMA's working, or they actually just completed a pilot project with this new mapping methodology, but none of us have seen it, which makes us nervous too. We don't know, so if we have to adopt these new prohibitions and regulations tomorrow, they would apply to those properties within your current flood map boundaries, okay? But the uncertainty is that right now, FEMA is working on those new mapping methodologies through this pilot project they've completed that we anticipate is going to push them out. So we won't be done, because as soon as those new maps are done, in whatever fashion they're going to be, all of those restrictions and prohibitions and limitations will extend out to now where those new map lines fall. And one of our other arguments to that point in our letter that we recently submitted is that not only are the documents incomplete, which makes this environmental review process premature, but if they're coming right behind us and they're remapping our areas, the environmental review should be on those areas as they're going to be remapped, because the whole point of the environmental review is to assess impacts. They're not taking the full scope of the area that they should be assessing impacts from. So, no.
I watched a video, and I was wondering if you could make it available for the people in the audience that would like to see the whole meeting.
Yes, ma'am. That is actually already on the community development department website.
It's on the Rockaway webpage.
Good. Yep. Yeah, we did put it out.
Thank you, Bill.
Mhm. It may not be as bad as we think it's going to be. As someone who's done this work for years and as a county school plan administrator, I am very concerned. I don't know how much we can.
I was at that meeting too there, and Yamamoto have done a good job of ripping FEMA moving. But the thing about it is, he's right on the money, because they're gonna break Sonoma County infrastructure. They're after the farmers, the loggers, the fishermen, everything. The people have to pay attention to what FEMA's doing.
That's exactly right.
And another thing, Yamamoto brought it up, that FEMA's not gonna, if they put it out, they're not gonna be responsible for implementing. The county commissioners are gonna be the ones that are responsible for figure that out.
And you, as the elected officials of Still Rockaway, will also be put in a position where you will be forced to either adopt these regulations or face the consequences. Couple of things that have really disappointed me throughout this process. And it's frustrating. FEMA has made it clear, they're not going to give us any credit for any of the restoration work we've done in the last 10 years. So the Southern Flow Corridor, all the wetland restoration projects, that's just not for them. Which is wrong. Your local planners, your city staff, myself, my staff, there's no technical assistance or funding that will be coming to make sure that we are implementing and administering appropriately what they want us to do. Which means that in doing our best, if we don't get it right, we go back and. The other thing is that, you know, the reality is local jurisdictions could be just completely inundated with lawsuits for property rights takings, right? Because if they're forced to adopt these new rules. people will start suing because they're going to lose either entirely or, proportionately development rights, which FEMA has also said they're not going to give us money to buy out properties, and they're not going to give us money to help us with taking lawsuits. So that puts all of our budgets at risk with the overlay, which then will impact other services that the cities and the county provide. There are 30 out of 36 counties in the state of Oregon that are impacted. The 6 counties that are not directly impacted, because I think the social and economic impacts will reach them as well. They have also written letters to FEMA and to congressional delegates to support all of us in asking that this process out.
Thank you, Director Absher, for coming. I mean, I know it's a tough message to deliver, but you did a great job, and we appreciate your candor. Thank you.
Sorry.
I signed that letter and sent it. Is that letter on the lead page so everybody else can sign it?
So the letters are now in the FEMA portal at the.
Okay, and is it too late to sign them?
Well, I don't think so, because Berkeley and Wyden asked them that peer review send it, so you can go to that link where you uploaded your letter and everybody.
Well, I got mine through the realtors.
Oh, yes, yeah, I helped try that, yeah. Yes, so you can write to Berkeley, you can write to Wyden, if you want to write to FEMA specifically about, the environmental review process. I will make a note, I will put that link to that portal on our website tomorrow. So give me here in the morning, but I will upload that link where you can write letters to send them as well. And we appreciate you doing that. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Maybe when we're talking about if we do, I'm sorry.
that's okay. Can we get, yeah.
I remember the first meeting that we did with Mr. Shepherd, he did such a great job about Rockaway Beach, the long-term plan for properties and everything. I remember asking the question, what's the definition of a wetland? And it was said, well, there are 3, and which is the best. So I'm just hoping maybe Rockaway Beach also in our planning, being on top of our own lands and situation, we can help be aggressive in supporting exactly what you're talking about by dotting those I's across those T's for what our regulations are or definitions are.
Councilor Hayes?
Well, and the last time we got our building codes updated, we went to like paperless drywall. And so we had a big shot of this once before, but maybe we need to get more serious if we're gonna update our residential codes, all of us together. Maybe we need to be proactive doing that too, so.
Once we get the guidance from FEMA, we'll be honest.
Yeah, we're good, right?
Yeah, that's.
It was hard to figure out last time, but we did, yeah. Yeah, the no fill thing, that's a big concern, isn't it?
The other one is known as loss of flood storage. So if you think about, the bathtub, the things in the bathtub that has water in it, the water rises, right? So what they're saying is no net rise. So essentially, to put something new in the bathtub, you have to do something. So when you look at cities and small lot sizes, how are you going to stop that no net rise? I mean, you don't have anywhere, what are you gonna do? So, yeah, more to come, but I guess the message would be, the county, myself, the commissioners, we're committed to seeing this through. And we'll do everything we absolutely can to represent our county for a fair and balanced approach that doesn't undermine our economy and our property rights. There's a better way to do this, and we're committed.
Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to our staff reports. The chair recognizes Fire Chief Todd Hesse to report on the fire department.
No powerful. Sorry. Honorable Mayor, City Council, City Manager, Rockaway Beach, you have before you a copy of the Fire Department report for April of 2023. We'll start off with our calls for service. 65 different events for the month. 911 calls, if you notice, it's just 24, which is down. But when I look back at April of 22, it was a down month too. It's that lull between spring break and summer. We got a little break this month. We're enjoying it. Trainings, we kept aggressive on our trainings. We had 13 last month, and then 28 non-emergent calls. Yeah, I did add a year down in the year-to-dates. I have enough data now. I can supply 2021 in that. So you can see a steady rise in our call numbers. Even 911 calls went from 93 to 129 in 2 years. Non-emergent calls went from 53 to 78, and trainings from 26 to 47. So aggressive numbers in all three of those categories. So bottom line, we went from 173 to 251 in the first 4 months of the year. So we're getting busy. We're training hard. You see that next swap. We worked on vehicle electrification, beach operations, using airbags last month. This month, as we gear up for the summer season, we'll be working on water rescue, some wildland firefighting, and that EMT class is wrapping up. We did the class finals last weekend. But the best thing I took away from that class was 20 people signed up for that class, 20 completed the class. And that's almost unheard of that somebody didn't drop out for some reason or move what they do. So real shout out to that class, one of the best ones I've seen in a long time. Training, I attended the Oregon Fire Chiefs Association meeting in Bend a couple weeks ago. And some of the takeaways I have that I think is important for the council and the citizens to know is our town is not unique to the problems along the coast. From Bandon to Astoria, the message is all about a lot of tourists, no funding to take care of the tourists, which has impacted our volunteers, our paid staff, our budgets. We didn't have any great solutions. We thought we would, but even all of us in the room couldn't come up with it. So know that we're working on it. We're meeting a couple times a year now, the coastal fire chiefs are, trying to come up with solutions. Our avenue to get support from the legislature is through our Oregon Fire Chiefs Board of Directors and the Oregon State Fire Marshals. The Oregon State Fire Marshal's office has increased their staff, almost doubled in the last couple of years due to the large wildfires. The legislature has started funding them more with some programs. Had a discussion tonight with somebody asking about wildfire risk reduction. There's actually grants there to help with our interface and defensible spaces. So we'll be pursuing that. We turn over to the second page and look at beach safety. Again, early in the year, but we're starting to see, I made 6 contacts personally last month. We had 13 people we actually removed from water, out of the water that were playing too deep or in the rip currents. So it was a little early for April to be seeing those kind of numbers. Looking forward to this weekend in particular with the highs and 80s here. We'll be on high alert and keep working hard to keep safe. And next is the shout out to our emergency preparedness group, which there's quite a few in this room right now. And we held a rescue or a fair, a preparedness fair, April 15th at Neal County High School. Impacted a couple hundred local citizens, gave out some great handouts and information from Rockaway, but we also had others. We had New Haven Fire, the Red Cross, the Coast Guard, State Park, PUD, a lot of participants making that program really successful and feel like a great job was done, especially with the organization. Really appreciated that. But this group is moving forward. We've got some classes coming up on water purification, pet first aid, Next month, we'll learn about incident command. And I want to reiterate that is an open group. So if you'd like to be a part of it, you just have to show up the first Wednesday of the month at 6 o'clock. And there's no other requirements other than come in and sit down and listen. We'll help you get along. I think sometimes when we try to recruit volunteers, people often think it's a closed group, and I get asked all the time, how do I show up? Will you show up? Well, we're happy to have you. So that's what we're going to be after. If you're interested, even if you just want to come check us out and see what we do, please show up. Love to see you. Our new air packs and self-contained breathing apparatus. We're working on the fit testing still. We're practicing with them. If we got 15 minutes, we're putting those things on. We're getting out and working on them. We get that seat time and have them on our backs. And not last but least, or last but not least, I can't remember how that goes. In the back row, we have firefighter Bruce tonight. He's here for his college class. He's trying to finish his fire science degree. And one of his assignments was to attend city council. So, I'm trying to keep his education up. Just makes him eligible to take a paramedic program when it's open up here in Tillamook County. So it benefits both of us and the community. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And
I will just mention about the emergency preparedness group. There's actually a button for them. I don't know if I use the right technical term there. On the city website. So if you want to read about them and see what they do and when their meetings are and stuff, just go to the city website and it's under departments at the bottom where it lists the departments and click on that and you can get info about that group.
yeah, and they're doing a remarkable job right now. The group grows every month. We're getting a little better at what we do and can provide for this community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hesse. The chair recognizes Deputy Kevin Grogan to report on the Tillamook County Sheriff's Office.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So April was a pretty steady month for citizens in Rockaway. We all know our beautiful and not so beautiful weather coming to the coast that provided a lot of traffic, not only vehicle but foot traffic. So we want to remind the citizens of Rockaway to remain vigilant. We all know where the speed limits are, we all know where the crosswalks are, we all know the school zones. Let's lead by example and hopefully the visuals will follow. Some notable calls for service. I touched on this last month, but a severe accident that we had occurring in front of the high school on 101. I'd like to pass on, if you're feeling drowsy, tired, sleepy, get some rest before you drive. The driver in this instance had fallen asleep behind the wheel, and luckily the driver of the semi used avoiding procedures and avoided a head-on collision, which could have caused it. So get your rest, feel tired, pull over, don't drive also. There have been multiple reports of cars being broken into, some even broad daylight along the way. We want to recommend taking all valuables with you. Don't leave anything within eyesight of the windows, and just remove all of valuables from vehicles, because if someone sees a bag in the car, they're most likely to try to break into it. On that note, we did have a burglary call in the south end of town, and the caller found someone inside their building. They were able to scare the intruder off, and the valuables that were taken from the home were located in the surrounding area. At this time, the sheriff's office would like me to pass along about our substation in the city hall. As we all know, we have 2 deputies right now working in Rockaway Beach 7 days a week. Our substation is located on the main floor of this building. That's a place where we can do reports, so we don't have to travel all the way back into Tillamook. We can eat our lunch, respond to calls, respond to services a lot quicker. So it's a great substation to let you guys know that we are here and we are present 7 days a week. And then I think that's pretty much it. This one. Is there any questions? I think it's pretty much.
I was under the impression that we were going to be getting a third officer. Is that still in the works this summer?
With things going on in the county, I'm not really allowed to talk about it, but I know we are still in the process of getting more deputies.
Thank you.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I noticed a constant presence of the sheriff's officers at the at the school during the time that the lights are flashing, making sure that the students and families are safe, and thank you for being there.
They're part of it, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
All active. And they're there, trust me, I check before I sit in my spot. And they're working, so. Anything else? Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Grogan. The chair recognizes Public Works Superintendent Dan Emerson to report on Public Works.
Mayor, city council members, city manager. Early in April, Rockaway Beach had a very brief power outage, which caused one of our lift stations to fail. We were able to replace some electrical parts and get the lift station back on. In addition, the water plant was affected by the surge, causing an alarm and shut down the water plant. While the equipment was down, it took some time to clean some equipment. Operators replaced failed equipment, cleared alarms, and were able to get the plant back in production. Public Works was able to purchase a new washer and dryer after the old one had failed. The old unit was a 110 combo washer dryer that never really worked well. So we installed a 220 volt plug that allows for the use of a proper dryer. This is for all employees to wash contaminated clothing before taking them home. In addition to getting a new washer and dryer, Public Works purchased a new toolbox for the upper shop, which has already been put to good use, saving us some space in our already limited shop. With extra time, Public Works has been maintaining gravel roads and storm drainage systems. The playground at Phillips Maker Park is starting to show signs of wear, requiring some maintenance. The squirrel with the spring rusted away and is now being replaced with a raccoon. The drinking fountain at the boardwalk was out of service and has been repaired and is back in service. With hot mix asphalt now becoming available, we took the opportunity to fill some potholes and cuts that have been made during recent installation or repair water and sewer services. I'm very sure that everyone is aware of the First Street crossing being repaired. Oregon Crossing Rail worked with Rockaway Beach and completed the crossing. This has been a great project, and I want to thank everyone involved, including the affected business owners and residents. Advanced excavation installed a pressure reducing valve vault on South Second railing. Public Works help is needed with parts and materials, as well as running water samples to the laboratory. This project's add resiliency to our water system, as stated in earlier reports, and the next project is coming to Scenic View Drive. Estimated delivery has constantly changed and is now May 17th. Our city leaders and local contractors sure make projects like this fun. I used to be in the ditch telling myself that one day I would be managing the project. I want to let everyone know how proud I am to work for the city of Rockaway Beach in any capacity, and will continue to do my best. With that, are there any questions?
One question, how long was the water plant down?
I think we had it down for 4 hours.
Doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Superintendent Emerson. City Manager Shepherd.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start off by thanking Tillamook County Community Development Director Sarah Absher for being here tonight. If you all aren't aware, she has a very, very busy schedule, and we're very fortunate to have her here tonight to explain those topics to us. And I want her to know she's not obligated to sit through the rest of our meeting. Anyway, so I've got a few things. I'll try to keep it short, but a few things that be worth mentioning tonight. Moira, she's on a planning commission, but she's moving on. She's no longer able to make the meetings. But we do have a vacancy on our planning commission, and we will have some updated applications online here shortly, and we'll put out some notices. And we've set an application deadline of June 27th. So if successful, we have enough candidates. The council to make an appointment at their July meeting. And our Public Works Superintendent mentioned the First Street crossing. The City Council signed the memorandum of understanding in February. And then Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad began work on the 17th of April. And our Public Works Department got the paving done on the 21st. Commissioner Hassel sent me a few nice photos. I could share them with you. Here is the before, in case anybody's already forgotten.
Hardly.
Yeah. And here's a nice after photo. So yeah, really nice job. And it was great to see Rockaway and Oregon Coast Scenic Road and Portsmouth Bay work together to get a project done. Great. And our fire chief also talked about preparedness fair. But I wanted to show a few pictures because it was very well attended, not just by members of our community, but also different agencies and other volunteer groups, preparedness groups around Tillamook County. It takes a lot of work to put on an event like this. And it was very successful, very well attended. I was very impressed, very impressed. And then we have another listening session for the Salmonberry Trail project coming up on May 17th, 6 to 8 p.m. here at Rockaway Beach City Hall. And I'm working with John Paul. We're going to do everything we can to get this noticed in every way possible. We had a fairly small attendance at our last meeting, and we want to remedy that. And I'm also talking to John Paul about having a third meeting if we need to make sure we really get the word out. And if anybody who wants to participate is able to. And what John Paul is doing is very important because as we move the project to the technical design phase, it's going to be much more difficult for us to come back to you all and say, is this okay? Is this okay? Are you okay if we do this? Because there are so many different agencies involved and funding agencies, and they all have their own sets of rules and priorities. And so it's going to be a tough project to navigate, especially the timeframes that we're going to be working under. So it's really important that we know exactly what you all want from us. So when we have to make decisions without coming back to the public, we have a very good idea of what our priorities are. So anyway, if you can make it, please attend, and you can also attend virtually as well. Then later tonight, we have, I think, 3 resolutions on our agenda. The first one, resolution 23993, fairly straightforward. It's something we do every year, and it's a request to the state of Oregon to receive some of their state revenue sharing funds. Our city of our size receives about $20,000 a year from them. And we held 2 public hearings on it. Well, the second one will be out there shortly. And then we've got a resolution 23988, and this will adopt the budget for the next budget year. Begins July 1st, 2023 goes through June 30th, 2024. Tonight will be our third public meeting, and the second public hearing we'll have on our budget for the next budget year. And then lastly, resolution 23987. And this will extend the law enforcement IGA we have with Tillamook County through their services through the sheriff's office. It's an annual renewal on the contract. It also allows the sheriff's office the opportunity to update the contract rates for the charges for their services each year. And that's all I have for you tonight.
All right, thank you, City Manager Shepherd. We'll move on to citizen input on non-agenda items, also known as the public comment. Thank you all for participating in public comment this evening in advance of your participation. I have the sign-up sheet. Is there anyone joining remotely who's indicated an interest in speaking? I'm getting a no. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I've got that. All right. The public comment period is an essential part of local government meetings. Each person has 5 minutes to speak. We'll have the timer up so you can judge for yourself as you're giving your talk. Our governing body takes the input into consideration. However, in observance of Oregon open meeting laws, this isn't the time for dialogue, but rather a time for us to listen to you. Our city manager is taking notes of action as needed. After I call your name, please approach the podium and state your full name and address for the record. Our first individual is Ms. Lisa Finkel. Is she here in? All right. Please come up to the podium and state your name and your address.
I'm actually going to talk to the council members because I want to see if you would be open to creating a more robust public records policy in the city of Rockaway. And doing a little research among all the Oregon coast towns, every city seems to have a real clear and defined public records policy. What will be public records to everyone? So for instance, a complaint is not a confidential piece of information. So I can get your complaint, you can get mine, I can get your address, your phone number, and all of the information. Some of the cities have adopted a policy that states, that all of that information is open, but it's really clear to the person who's making the complaint. This I know will be open to the public to be able to see my name, my address, my phone number. Some cities have taken the stance to redact that and make that private and confidential. And I would like to see Rockaway take a stance either way and make it a real strong public records instead of right now it's a cut and paste of the statute of what the state laws are instead of really what is Rockaway going to do for this. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Ms. Robin Swain. Hey.
A work caps off, citizen hands-on. I'm Robin Swain, 113 Miller Street, South Miller Street. And I just want to tell you about our Rockaway Writers Weekend. Magic happens at the Roastery over a cup of coffee. We were talking about writing groups and starting one up. I mentioned that I remember getting a scholarship from our local writers group. We don't have that anymore. So we decided to go for it. So Cosmo, Neil Emery, John Blackman, and I started the Rockaway Writers Rendezvous. We had it the last weekend of April. We went into this, just let's get it started. We raised a couple $100, yay. And we ended up with a full program of prize-winning authors and writers that did phenomenal workshops. And instead of a couple $100, we will be giving 2 $500 scholarships up at the high school. We think this is not bad for a first-time 2-month planned event. Going forward, will be an annual event the last weekend of April because there's really nothing conflicting with it. And we just hope to really see this grow and grow. Before our event even happened, we had authors signing up to present for next year. So we're really excited about this. And we want to give a big shout out to Summit County Parks Foundation. They were our sponsoring nonprofit this year. We will be our own nonprofit next year with our writing group because we're going to keep this going so we can have more events throughout the year to help raise money for this. And a big shout out to all the Rockaway businesses. They stepped up for the raffle basket. It was incredible. It valued between all the businesses contributions over $1,700. Garibaldi had about Garibaldi Bay City combined. Excuse me, I'm really hurt. It makes my voice shake. They put together a planning and RV stay, and all the businesses contributed. They were like $1,000 basket. The 3 villages, Nahalem, Manzanita, and Wheeler. They put a nice kayaking weekend together. And it was just great. It was a phenomenal weekend. Students stepped up to the open mic each night and, performed original tunes, recited original poetry, along with presenters and other people that joined in on the workshops. It was great. It was phenomenal. And we really hope all of you will be even more involved next year. And did I miss anything, Cosmo?
No, I think that's great.
Okay. That's it. And I still have a minute to spare.
Thank you very much. As I've read about it, it was a phenomenal event for our city, and I'm really happy to hear that it's going to go on annually. So thank you. All right, Mr. Daniel Hallett, please approach the podium, state your name and your address, and you're on the clock.
All right, my name is Daniel Hallett. I live at 132 North Brayden Street. Today, I just really wanted to talk about the public records request and specifically the city staff suppressing free speech. So the beginning of April, I submitted public testimony, written testimony, emailed it into the city manager. City manager replied, yep, it will be included. Great. So the meeting happens, a week goes by, and I realize nothing happened in my public testimony. It's just got buried. So I emailed, so what happened in my public testimony? And as it turns out, there's actually no rule that requires the city council to do anything with your public testimony. I can't believe that. I mean, we're in 2023 and there's no rule. So I just thought, that's strange. So I looked into it and said, well, there's got to be some kind of rule. And what is the existing rule? And when did my public testimony actually become public? And Mr. Shepard replied and said, oh, it did get publicized before the meeting. Okay, great. When? And there's no answer. So I understand that you're actually revising the rules now, but until there's actually a rule, you can't be violating the rule because there is no rule. So that's what I was told. My public testimony is irrelevant based on no clear instructions to when the need to be posted. So I submitted a public record request. I emailed it in, it landed on the public website. It has to be electronic consent. So there's got to be a record. And yet, the city replied to my public records request with no document exists for this request. How can that be? It's an email. So I just feel like at this point, you look up the rule, it's ORS 192.329. It says that public entities must publish public testimony without delay. There are exceptions. So I still have not received a response, and I do expect a response. And my last email just went, nobody responded. So this is becoming very frustrating. I started reaching out to some of the people in the community, and as it turns out, this is happening a lot, where the city staff just simply does not get back to you. I don't know if you guys experience this. You email somebody and they just don't get back to you. And I just feel like this is very frustrating, and I'm here to complain and insist that you guys do respond to my public records requests. And if this turns out that there's been something wrong, I think you need to discipline the staff. So that's what I'm here to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howlett. Again, thanks for you being engaged in city government and sharing your thoughts and opinions. It really makes us a better city when the residents are fully engaged with what we do here at the council meeting. All right, we have no old business before us, so we'll move on to new business. Item 9A, public hearing on proposed uses of state revenue sharing funds for fiscal year 2023-2024. The Rockaway Beach City Council is now scheduled to hold a public hearing on the proposed uses of state revenue sharing funds. Notice of this public hearing was published in the May 2nd edition of the Tillamook Headlight Herald on the city's website, at City Hall, and the Rockaway Beach Post Office. All documents have been available for inspection as required by state statute and city charter. At this time, I open the public hearing. The The purpose of this public hearing is to receive public testimony on the proposed uses of state revenue sharing funds. Anyone wishing to speak shall raise their hand until recognized. They shall then approach the podium and state their full name and address for the record. Persons speaking shall address their comments to the city council as a whole and keep their comments to 5 minutes. Anyone joining us remotely who wishes to provide testimony can notify the meeting monitor by clicking the raise hand icon. Is there anyone in the room wishing to speak on this subject? I see no hands. Is there anyone joining us remotely that wishes to speak on this topic? I get there is not. If there are no further speakers, I will close the public hearing at this time. All right, 9B, Resolution 23993, declaring city's election to receive state revenue. State revenue sharing law requires cities to annually pass a resolution requesting state revenue sharing money. Approval of Resolution 23993 will satisfy the state's requirement and allow the city to receive revenue sharing funds in 2023-2024 fiscal year. The chair will entertain a motion that Rockaway Beach City Council approve Resolution 23993.
I motion we pass resolution number 23-993, a resolution declaring the city's election to receive state.
I second it.
Seconded. It is moved and seconded that the Rockaway Beach City Council approve resolution 23993. Does the maker of the motion wish to make any supporting comments? Anybody else on the council wish to make comments? All right, we'll move to a vote. Council President Cheek,
Yes.
Councilor Franken,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Councilor Martine,
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
It's approved unanimously. 9C, public hearing to receive testimony on the budget as approved by the Budget Committee. The Rockaway Beach City Council is now scheduled to hold a public hearing to receive public testimony on the budget as approved by the Budget Committee. Notice of this public hearing was published in the April 25th edition of the Tillamook Headlight Herald on the city's website, at City Hall, and the Rockaway Beach Post Office. All documents have been available for inspection as required by state statute and city charter. At this time, I open the public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive public testimony on the budget as approved by the Budget Committee. Anyone wishing to speak shall raise their hand until recognized. They shall then approach the podium and state their full name and address for the record. Persons speaking shall address their comments to the city council as a whole and keep their comments to 5 minutes. Anyone joining us remotely who wishes to provide testimony can notify the meeting monitor by clicking the state, the raise hand icon. Is there anyone in the room that wishes to speak? Yes, Mr. Howlett. Please approach the podium, state your name and your address, and you're on the clock.
132 North Raymond Street. So I watched the 2 budget meetings online, and I just wanted to weigh in as kind of a casual observer of the process. And first, I just gotta say it's extremely complex and complicated. Following all the transfers and all the acronyms that aren't spelled out what they mean. I mean, I usually feel like I can figure things out, but this is really tricky. In fact, there were a couple of members of the Budget Committee who voted no because they didn't understand it. And to me, that just seems crazy to me, that it's just not simplified or made in such a way that it could be understood by an average person. I also want to just say, there was someone there, it's actually Mr. Elkins, that made a very good point, and yet was marginalized with his comment. He essentially brought up a very good point. He says, maybe we should have an independent cost-benefit analysis of going to a fire district. You know, he just wants information, cost-benefit analysis. And yet, he was overwhelmingly rejected. And I understand that was maybe not the time and place to have that conversation. Maybe now is the time and place. I actually mentioned to Todd Hesse out in the hallway, It's great that you can get a couple $1 million in fire engines, but what about your big project on the hill, the high ground project? You're talking 5, 10, 20 years out? How much is it gonna cost us to rebuild the fire department up on the hill? We're not even talking about that. So it doesn't really feel like a strategic plan if you're really not being honest about what we're doing. So I kind of feel like we need to talk about a fire district. I also feel like we should be talking about a police district. Why not a recreation district? It's interesting, we've contracted our police out to Tillamook. It'd be interesting to know, is the service better? Is it worse? Does it cost us less? Does it cost us more? We're not even talking about these things. So it just seems to me like we're having these conversations, yet they're very muted, and certain voices are being marginalized. I just feel like that's unfair. Another point, the Parks and Rec. During the candidate forum, bringing back the Parks and Rec was a big deal. It hasn't even been discussed. And I brought that up a couple months ago and said that we plan first, hire second. We're not even planning. So I kind of feel like if we're going to do the things we say we're going to do, let's do it. Let's talk about the Parks and Rec and actually hire a Parks and Rec director. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? If there are no further speakers, I will close the public meeting at this time. 9D, Resolution 2398, adopting the city budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. One resolution contains all 4 action items required for the adoption of the city fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. 1, adopting the fiscal year budget. 2, approving the appropriations of funds. 3, categorizing taxes. And 4, approving the tax levy. Staff did identify an error while preparing the approved budget for adoption. City Manager Shepherd will explain the situation with a recommended solution.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So yeah, we discovered a mistake in the budget that was given to the budget committee. And the short explanation is one of the line items in the general fund administration section was increased by $5,000, but that change didn't propagate through the rest of the budget. And that becomes an issue because for a city budget, the number 1 rule is your resources need to match requirements. At this point, they don't. So the council needs to make a change to the budget so that the budget resolution is correct. So it's fairly easy to fix. We're very fortunate we found it before the budget was adopted. So the easiest fix is for the council to make a motion to reduce one of the line items on page 18. And so my suggestion would be, for instance, line 23, I don't know if you can see that, City Hall operations is budgeted at $88,000. So my recommendation would be a motion from the city council to amend the budget by reducing line 23 from 88,000 to 83,000. Something along those lines. It's up to the council which line is modified, but these funds are all part of a larger pool. And so 9 months down the road, it won't affect operations too much, which line has changed, but we do have to make that reduction. So the overall budget balances.
So can I make that motion right now?
Yes.
Well, I'll entertain
Okay.
a motion that Rockaway Beach City Council amend the approved budget by reducing line item 23 on page 18 from 88,000 to 83,000.
I'm always happy to make that motion. So I motion we reduce line 23 from 88 to 83,000.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right. It is moved and seconded that City Council amend the approved budget by reducing line item 23 on page 18 from 88,000 to 83,000. Does the maker of the motion wish to make any comments in support of that? Any other council member wish to comment? All right. Since there are no discussion, let's record how councilors vote. Council President Cheek,
Yes.
Councilor Franken,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Councilor Martine.
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. The chair will entertain a motion that Rockaway Beach City Council approve or disapprove Resolution 23988.
I move that the Rockaway Beach City Council approve resolution 23-988.
Second?
I second it.
Okay. It is moved and seconded that Rockaway Beach City Council approve Resolution 23-988. Any comments? All right, let's Council President Cheek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilor Franken,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes, Councilor Martine,
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. All right. We move on to 9E. This is the fun part of the evening. We're going to start with the selection of Grand Marshal for the 2023 July 4th parade. A moment to get to the councilors have before them a list of individuals with supporting comments nominated for Grand Marshal. In selecting a Grand Marshal, councilors will consider community service, accomplishments and awards, length of time living in the community, personal deeds, and dedication to the community over their lifetime. We're first going to ask each city council to share who they believe should be selected as Grand Marshal and why they support that particular nominee. And then we'll follow that by having them vote, and they each have ballots before them, and they will fill out the ballot and pass it to City Manager Shepherd. So, Council President Cheek, who do you think deserves and why?
For which one?
Grand Marshal.
For the Grand Marshal? I think that Ronnie Duckworth would be a good selection.
And
I believe he and his wife put a lot of energy and work in our city. And they add a lot of support for our businesses. And I just think that they're worthy people.
Thank you.
Mr. Duckworth is a worthy person.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilor Franken.
Well, I don't disagree with Councilor Cheek, but I'd also like to recognize Annie Loman.
She was the marshal last year.
That wasn't in the notes. So.
No.
But
Very deserving person.
yes, she's contributed a lot to the community over the years and appears to be quite beloved by the community.
Thank you. Councilor Hayes.
For me, it would be without, well, I love Annie. I would pick Annie, but she was Grand Marshal last year, so for sure she would get it. After that, I would say without a doubt, it would be the roastery for me. I think they've done our whole community a great service. I think we've all been touched by them, by the roastery, and I love to see a business on there, So, yeah,
Right.
for me, it's the roastery.
Thank you. Councilor Martine.
I'm voting for Terry Walhood because I don't know anybody in this community that does more for our town than Terry. He's involved in everything. She always has been. I've known her for many years, and she doesn't stop.
Thank you. Councilor McGinnis.
Well, I would agree with Councilor Hayes. I think it'd be rather interesting to have a business. So I'm voting for the roastery. And it's rare that a business comes into town and impacts all of the citizenry in such a positive way as they have. And we just heard Robin talk about how they hosted the writers group and just always doing things, working with the high school's music program. So it's more than just us sitting here. They're working with high school students, just doing a lot of things that really impact the community.
Good, thank you. And all of these nominees would be great choices.
Yes.
But I have to agree with Councilor Martine. Terry Walhood floats to the top for me. She has just been an icon in this community, done so many wonderful things, both within city council, as mayor, as councilor, the volunteer things she does, the community garden, the Hope Chest. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so she floats to the top. All right. With that, please mark your ballot. I don't think I get to vote, correct?
You don't get to vote on the motion.
Oh, but I can vote.
We'd love to see your ballot.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. This is like pretty exciting for a mayor doesn't get to vote very often.
I don't think you're voting, actually.
Well,
So as I understand, we've got 2 for 1.
we'll see when
Okay, so it's interesting, all right. We have a 3-way tie.
How's that possible?
Terry Walhood, Ronnie Duckworth, and the Rockaway Roastery each have 2 votes.
Let's start a new trend.
We don't have to have only one, no, that's would like to carry on with the discussion and submit a second set of ballots?
What would happen, following what Robin just said, what would happen is if we had 3 Grand Marshal cars and had all of them in there?
I don't know how many convertibles we have. That's my concern.
That would have hurt, I'm sure, we could put the cars.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, we just need a motion.
I
All
make,
right.
oh, sorry, Charles.
That's okay. We need a motion for selecting the 3 nominees to be joint grand marshals in our parade.
I make a motion. I make a motion that since we have 3 first place winners, that all 3 first place winners be co-marshals of the parade.
Okay, so it is moved and seconded that Rockaway Beach City Council select the top 3 vote getters. That's Terry Walhood, Ronnie Duckworth, and the Rockaway Roastery as joint grand marshals for the 2023 July 4th parade. Any comments in support of that, or should we just move to voting? I'm thinking we're moving to voting. All right. Council President Cheek.
Yes.
Councilor Franken.
Yes.
Councilor Hayes. Councilor Martini.
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
And it passes unanimously.
And they have to bring their own car.
Okay, we're not gonna entertain that motion, but okay. All right.
Congratulations.
Yes, all deserving. All right, the council has before them a list of individuals with supporting comments nominated for volunteer of the year. In selecting a volunteer of the year, councils will consider community service, personal deeds, and dedication to the community over the past 12 months. As we did with the Grand Marshal, ask each councilor to share with us their choice and why. And beginning with Council President Cheek.
I chose Terry Bruno. I think she has just been very under the radar as far as what she does for this community. She is the president of the senior meals. She just does a fabulous job. She works in the kitchen. She works, if need be, driving a car, delivering meals. She's been just a tremendous support in the community, and her husband taking care of people that need to be fed. And she had a family group that she took care of. It was, they would pick 5 families every Christmas, and they would completely give them a complete dinner and give all the kids and mom and dad presents. And it all came out of their pocket personally. And I think somebody like that really needs to be considered. Thank you.
Well said. Councilor Franken.
Yes, I'm supporting Sandy Johnson, and she does a lot for the city as well. I've personally run into her watering plants, and she helped direct the 4th of July parade last year. She's on our planning commission, and she's helped helping us with grant writing for our watershed study. So she does a lot, and without drawing a lot of attention to herself, and she's a really good citizen.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilor Hayes.
For me, it's Sandy too. When I look at the letters that were submitted, Sandy by far had more letters submitted with reasons, and I find her to be very humble. You know, she doesn't want any credit, but she seems to be helping everywhere I go. And so, and I also want to say, Pat Olson has been a piece of our structure and our infrastructure for many years, and most people don't know that. But he is a volunteer, and he was one of our public works guys for many years. And so I want to shout out to him and honor him, and Terry Bruno too. But Sandy, I see everywhere, helping everywhere, not just in one space. And it looks like that's how the rest of the community feels too. And I adore Kim, and I probably shouldn't vote for her because we're super close. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Councilor Hayes. Councilor Martine.
Yeah, I'm voting for Pat Olson because, like they said, not everybody knows everything he's done. I've known him ever since I got here, and through Public Works and through my hardware store, and then I joined the fire department back in '96, and he was a captain then. And he's been for 30 years on the fire department, and he's also got 10 years. 10 years in the planning commission.
Yep, 10 years.
And so he goes up and down the street helping people all day long. Just probably to get away from his wife. I don't know.
Can you go back and blank that out on the tape, please?
Yeah, but he's always doing things for people.
Well said. Councilor McGinnis.
I'm going to vote for Sandy Johnson also for several reasons. One, she received more letters and support than anyone else did. And also, she writes grants for the city. She wrote a grant for our watershed, which I think you mentioned. She was recruited to write it by the city just days before she was leaving for Spain and on a vacation. And so she hurried up and got it in, and she waters the plants. She helps plant. She's on the board of Senior Meals. She put together the candidate forum before the election last year, and saw all the material, made sure all the working materials and all the people that needed to be there were there. And every day it's something like that. And she's on the planning commission. I could go on and on and on, and she never takes credit for anything she does. She just very quietly does it and moves on. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, we're blessed to have these people in our community. Both the grand marshals and these folks, they make it a better place for us. But for all the reasons that Councilor McGinnis and Councilor Franklin said, I am lifting up Sandy Johnson. She's touched my life in meaningful ways. We see her watering the plants. She just touches so much in her community, and that's not to say the rest of the people aren't deserving, but Sandy for me rises to the top. So let's mark our ballots and pass them to City Manager Shepherd.
All right, well, fortunately, we have a winner this time. Sandra Johnson has 4 votes. Terry Riddle has 1, and Pat Olson has 1.
Well, the chair will entertain a motion that Rockaway Beach City Council select Sandy Johnson as 2023 Volunteer of the Year.
I motion we make Sandy Johnson volunteer of the year.
Second?
I second it.
Second. It's moved and seconded that Rockaway Beach City Council select Sandy Johnson as 2023 Volunteer of the Year. We'll move to voting. Council President Cheek.
Yes.
Councilor Franken.
Yes.
Councilor Hayes.
Yes.
Councilor Martine.
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. We'll now move on to 9G on the agenda. This is Resolution 23987, a resolution amending the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Rockaway Beach and the Tillamook County Sheriff's Office for law enforcement services. This resolution acts to extend the existing law enforcement intergovernmental agreement between the City of Rockaway Beach and the Tillamook County Sheriff's Office for an additional 12 months and adjusts charges for services rendered. We do not have any in attendance who wish to speak on this. Is there anybody remotely who has indicated an interest? All right. We do not have anybody, so I will, the chair now will entertain a motion that Rockaway Beach City Council approve Resolution 23987.
I move that the Rockaway Beach City Council approve resolution 23-987.
I'll second.
Seconded. It is moved and seconded that the Rockaway Beach City Council approve Resolution 23987. Any comments in support of the motion? Any comments against the motion? All right, let's move to voting. Council President Cheek.
Yes.
Councilor Franken.
Yes.
Councilor Hayes.
Yes.
Councilor Martine.
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, which brings us to council comments. Council President Cheek.
The city beautification wants to give a thank you to the Public Works for removing a big spiky plant.
There you go.
From the pots at City Hall and at Sequest Mall, so we could replant. So that was a note given to me by the beautification committee. So I gave it.
Thank you. What else would you like to share with us?
I don't really have that much. I think we did quite a bit of good work this afternoon or evening, and I'm real happy with some of the choices that we've made.
Thank you. Thank you. We now go to Councilor Franken.
Yeah, I know she already left, but I'd like to thank Sarah for educating us on HB 406 as well as the FEMA buyout decision. Is really important to our community, potential of great impact. I'd also like to thank Fire Chief Hesse for especially commend the activities surrounding the emergency preparedness. I echo what City Manager Luke Shepherd said earlier. And the monthly meetings are a great service to our community in emergency preparedness. I'd also like to express my appreciation for Public Works Superintendent Dan Emerson and your dedication to our community. I'm also grateful to your entire team for keeping our public works functioning in an exemplary manner. Finally, I'd like to thank City Manager Luke Shepherd, Becca, Kale, and all of the city staff for their hard work in keeping our city running well and smoothly.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
I would like us to talk about the public, some of our policies. I know that we're working on the public testimony and our policies, but maybe the public records policy to make sure that that's what we all want to reflect. I had a friend ask me if I report the STR that's blocking the vision coming out on the highway, are they going to know that I'm the person who reported them? And I didn't know. And so I asked Luke and he said, yes, they would know. And so she didn't file her complaint. And so what Lisa talked about has come up more. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I think we should all make sure that whatever we're doing is what we want to, or what they want us to do, if that makes sense. I thought it would be confidential. And so I want people to be able to speak up if there's something going on, and I don't know what that looks like too. So I'd like to talk about that if we could. And what else? I hate the spiky plants too. So I think we should I would like an ordinance that bans that tree thing, that palm thing. Have you ever brought it here? Actually, because they're hell. And we're having the first farmers market tomorrow from 4 to 8 at the Wayside. And we're very, very thrilled about that. We're gonna have pirates, lots of pirates and bubbles. And so please come and join us if you're here. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Martin.
A few weeks ago, I was contacted by Frank Hannah Williams, who's the director of Children and Family Counseling. And with all the talk about affordable housing, he wanted me to do a walkthrough for him. My background is commercial construction. And because the counseling center has bought the Kilch's house and wanted me to give them ideas of what to do. They want to make that affordable housing for people, and predominantly first their patients. And because the purchase came with 2 cars too, so they can actually have somebody drive the patients to the counseling center and back. And but that was quite interesting to do. In my opinion, on turning it into a affordable housing.
Wonderful.
Very interesting walkthrough.
Yeah. Good. Anything else? Oh, thank you. Councillor McGinnis.
Thank you. I also echo what Councillor Hayes just said. I'd like it on our next workshop for us to look at what our policies are about public records and make sure that we're all clear about that. I joined the emergency management team, or a group. I don't know exactly whether it's a group or a team, maybe both, this last month, and I'm very glad to represent the council voice on that. And I want to say that we are having a entry in the 4th of July parade. So please, if we reach out to you for to walk and hand out candy, please do that. And again, they're on the website, so you can read about them. Most of us attended 2 League of Oregon City trainings this month. And I keep bringing this up, but the League of Oregon City gives us professional development. Like most jobs, you take professional development to update your skills. Elected officials get to update their skills through these trainings. So the city paid for that. So I do want to mention that. Thank you. And I also want to thank, I want to say something about the railroad crossing that has been fixed. So I'm also, this has nothing to do with me being city council, but I'm also a board member of the Tillamook Fairview Grange, and we have a group of senior citizens that play cards there 3 times a week. And last week, a man came in to play cards and he said he was 94 years old and he lives here in Rockaway. And all he wanted to talk about was how he could get across the railroad now. So yay for us. I wanted to thank City Manager Luke Shepard for the work he's doing for the city. As we sit and we talk about all the projects that are going on, all the growth in the city, we're fortunate to have a city manager who is both a visionary and a detailed person. And that's a really hard combination to find. So thank you, City Manager. I also want to thank the Lions Club. Most of you probably knew this. I did not know that the Lions Club did the backpack program for children in the school district and provided food in the summer for them and things. And I was in the Lions Club building, and Zandra took me back to show me the storehouse of food. And so I want to thank the Lions Club for the work they're doing. And please check out the new activities of the chamber, the farmers market, the artisans market that's coming up. There's some really great flyers you can pass out if you want to help out, support it. But we're going places in Rockaway. It's a good time to be in Rockaway right now.
All right, thank you. Yes, so we're ending with a PowerPoint. Everybody excited? Okay.
So the big button.
The big button. Ooh, okay. I don't know. Technology. All right. Back when I was campaigning, I said that I would work to bring greater connection between the residents and city government. And so one of the first things that City Manager Shepard and I are going to start in May, beginning May 25th, is a meet with manager and mayor. And so 4th Thursday of every month from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., we'll be in City Hall, 2nd floor conference room. It's a drop-in session. You don't have to have an appointment. Just come and bring your questions and comments and suggestions. And so this will begin this month and will continue month after month. I will tell you just so you can start thinking about it, we are going to have our first town hall in July of this year. And at that town hall, I'll deliver a state of the city message, which is the 2 other things that I talked about during my campaign. So I hope to see lots of people May 25th and subsequent 4th Tuesdays of the month. All right, fireworks in Rockaway Beach. Last council meeting, I talked about an exemption, July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It was suggested to me that I dig deeper because I didn't have the complete picture of the ordinances that apply to fireworks in Rockaway Beach. So the relevant city ordinances, there's really 3 of them. And the one I spoke about last month was really the noise ordinance. And there's an exception to the noise ordinance. And then under chapter 90, there's a sale of fireworks ordinance and a use of fireworks ordinance. And then it comes up in the weapons and fireworks chapter of our ordinances. So the noise ordinance, as I stated last week, there is an exemption, July 1st to July 5th. So if somebody sets off detonates fireworks, they cannot be fined up to $250 for creating the noise. And that's all it does. It just simply exempts them from receiving a citation and a fine up to $250. It's all about the noise. So keep that in mind. Chapter 90, general regulations, sale of fireworks. It shall be unlawful for any person, firm, or corporation to sell fireworks within the city of Rockaway Beach until he or she has received a permit from the Oregon State Fire Marshal and provided the city with a copy of the permit. And I will tell you the Chamber of Commerce has done that. So their sale of fireworks is all legal and above board. And Chief Hesse assured me he had the copy of the permit. 90.02F, however, says it shall be unlawful for any person to shoot or discharge fireworks within the city of Rockaway Beach. So even during those 5 days, July 1st till July 5th, you can be cited for setting off fireworks and receive a fine of up to $500 for that activity. 7/24, every day of the year, it is illegal to set off fireworks in the city of Rockaway Beach. And then last, the section 131-040, discharge of weapon discharge permit. No person shall fire or discharge a weapon within the corporate limits of the city or within land owned or controlled by the city. Weapon means any instrument capable of causing serious physical injury, damage, or death to a person or to property. Weapon includes fireworks, meeting the above definition. So another nuance for how the city feels about fireworks and not allowing them to be set off. And this would incur up to a $500 penalty. That's my story. And if there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
Second?
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Council President Cheek,
Yes.
Councilor Franken,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes, Councilor Martine,
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 8:24 on Wednesday.